2 failed startups, followed by a sensationally successful startup, and then an acquisition. Our guest is a seasoned e-commerce and SaaS founder, and he's sharing his best startup gems with us today. Woohoo! Stay tuned for the Startup Life live show. Let's glow. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Startup Life live show. I'm your host, Ande, Lyons, 4 times founder and startup champion to founders around the world. And after raising 4 businesses of my own, I now share founder startup stories to help newly minted business owners find the solutions and inspiration they need to succeed. So I'm grateful that you carved out time to tune in and up your founder game while cheering on a fellow founder, because you never know. You might hear a solution, a tool, a resource, or just have an aha moment while you're listening to our guests' startup stories. And if you're tuning in live today, please share a yoo-hoo in the comments. And if you're watching the replay, let me know. #replay. And there goes my earring. You know, live shows must go on anyway. And if you're tuning in from YouTube, please share your subscribe love and click the icon bell there, the bell icon, so you'll get an alert whenever we go live. And wherever you are right now, because we are live on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. I know there's got to be a song for this, and YouTube. Please like this video because it sends it out into your stream, and a random founder might find it and go, what? This is amazing. And we'll have added value to their life thanks to your like. So thank you so much for that. And I am so excited today to share our guest with you. You know, I'm so blessed to have these amazing founders show up in my life. And Raj Sheth is one of them. And when he came across my radar, I said, oh my gosh, I have to have this extraordinary man on the show, because not only is he a serial SaaS entrepreneur, he made it through 2 failed e-commerce startups before he founded Recruiterbox in 2011 and exited to private equity after growing it to 3,000 customers and $4 million in annual recurring revenue. Can we just go, what? And today, let me just grab some collateral here to show you this little wonderful piece of information about Raj. Today, he runs FlyData as their CEO. And this is a company he acquired in 2020 that helps fast-growing e-commerce companies centralize their data for analysis. So you know we are going to go deep into the numbers today, because metrics are everything to running any business, but definitely an e-commerce business. But still, we're going to hear some fascinating startup stories as well, right? Yay! So let's bring Raj to the room. Welcome to the show, Raj. Woohoo!
Excited to be here.
You know, and I was just saying to Raj, you know, the best thing about when you hit that live button is that you go live and there's no editing. There's no going back. There's no finding the back to my earring. So I'm just going to be a solo earring wearer today, which is so much fun. But anyway, I just want to say hi to a few folks who are tuning in. Celine. Oh, love seeing you. Raj, Celine does so many great things for companies. And of course, he's all about the metrics and the data as well. But he also runs amazing Twitter space chats. And I don't know if you've ever hopped on a Twitter space chat, but it can be so much fun and exciting. And here's one of my favorite indie film directors, producers, and everything creative, Mr. Aaron Weisblatt. Mr. Weisblatt, I hope we're going to see you next month. So exciting. Everyone follow Aaron everywhere he goes. He produces and puts out amazing films. Okay. And the one and only Asia, the UX goddess. How are you today, Asia? So happy to see you. Yay. So Raj, where are you hanging from today?
San Francisco, and it's hopefully sunny today.
Yeah. Awesome. And no smoke in the air. So we're happy about that, right?
for now.
For now. Tough times up in that area. But we were talking about when we were doing our show check, how much I love that beautiful city. And of course, the Water Bar is one of my favorite places to go and hang out. But I'm so delighted that you joined us today because you have some amazing stories to share. And weaving throughout that, we are going to talk about how you need to track the right metrics, folks, for your e-commerce business and any business that you have, because that data is what helps you move forward with your business in the right direction. I also want to remind everybody, amplify your brand. You saw me do a shout out for Aaron and for Joseline and Asia. Throw in your business name, website, URL, and a one-liner so we know what's going on. And we'll bring it up and we'll just celebrate you live right here. And if you have any questions for Raj or myself during the show, please pop those in because we want to make sure that you are learning and growing. And for those of you watching the replay, same thing. We'll swing by and answer, okay? And help you out in any way we can. All right, let me just pull that down. We've done all that great housekeeping. Let's get into your story. So I'm always curious as to why anybody would start a business, right? Why leave payroll behind and all the benefits of just kind of understanding your daily routine when you're an employee? When you went to go launch a business, now I know you had gone to school at Babson, which is one of the best entrepreneurship schools out there. Did you have any role models in your life, Raj, of entrepreneurs, or was this the school that inspired you? How did it happen?
Yeah, actually, it was the other way around. I applied early D to Babson because I was always interested in creating something of my own, and I'll tell you why. But I was super curious, how can a college teach you how to be an entrepreneur? And that curiosity is what, kind of led me to apply to Babson. But before that, I think I grew up with both my parents being entrepreneurs, and they sort of, at first it was need based, but they just kind of found their opportunity, and they both were self-made real estate developers. So funnily, I thought that was the default, right? The de facto. And I was always excited about what my adventure is going to be.
I love that. But, and trust me, real estate development, it's so nice. You've got a nice hard asset. You can track all the parts and pieces. There's no nebulous stuff out there. It's, do you have vacancy? If you've built something like a commercial real estate, or are you filling that property up? I mean, it's just so tangible. I love it. Versus, what we have to do a lot of times, which is marketing out into the world. So why did you go into technology then? I mean, how did you become fond of software as a service, SaaS, and e-commerce?
So, the way I thought about it, to be honest, is I was a business major, and I loved and understood numbers. And the truth is that I was not an engineer, didn't understand technology too deeply. And creating software was not my primary passion. But like a lot of people that were sort of beginning to create something around, 2000, the year 2000 and change, that's when I was, in undergrad. I just fell in love with the internet. So I think of it as the internet and not technology per se, because I was like, wow, now there's an opportunity to, create an experience, right, on a website or online, and you can fill up your own stadium with so many people. And of course, a lot of it, what was naive, amateur.
Well, when did you graduate from Babson?
2003.
Okay, so we'd already had our .bomb period, right? But you'd also gotten a flavor, because that was a very exciting time, I know from personal experience.
Yeah.
And so so you were seeing things that you saw the potential.
Yeah, and I was just, so I think we were talking about this probably on our last chat, but at Babson was when I created my first sort of, let's call it a student business, not a company. And it was a website that delivered food from restaurants that did not deliver. and we
boy,
kind
does
of
that sound familiar?
yeah, it's like a DoorDash before the smartphone and the
Right.
apps, right? Like only if it was a few years later, right? So we did that because we were in, as being right there in Massachusetts, we were in a suburban campus, and at 10 p.m. when like the meal plan stuff is done, it's only like Domino's or Chinese, and we
That's
were like,
right.
hey, everybody's banging away at their laptops at 10:30 p.m. Wouldn't it be great if they could just like place an order right then? And we didn't have much of an operation. It was just one consolidated delivery of food from this restaurant, and that restaurant used to give me 30%. So I used to just take a 30% cut but have the
Sweet.
same price, and that went great for a while. So it wasn't it was just two campuses. We also went from Babson to Wellesley
Yeah.
campus next door for a brief while back then, and then yeah, but it was a working website, and we were getting orders, so I was pretty excited.
Exactly. So you got the flavor, no pun
Yeah.
intended,
Yeah.
of how this all works.
Yeah.
How do you set something up? How do you monetize it? How do you get repeatable business?
Yeah.
Because to me, that's the real sign of success is
Yeah.
either you have something that customers will buy again and again, or people keep coming and purchasing what it is that you have, and figuring out where were the metrics, right, for success. How much
So,
did it, at the time, I don't know if you were looking at how much did it cost to bring someone on board, but you were getting a pretty fair idea of, okay, it's costing me this to host this website and
sure.
my time. So
Yeah. Yeah.
congratulations, dipping your toe in. Yay.
Yeah.
So what came next? What was your next business that you tried?
So after I graduated, we kind of sold that business to a fellow student for just a little bit of money, just for them to continue that on campus. I
Mhm.
worked at EMC Square for 3 years.
Wonderful company. So you got to go in and see how a major corporation, buttoned up corporation was run, even though that was still the early days for EMC, but they were growing fast.
Yeah, no. So EMC has had a long run, but I was super fortunate because at that time EMC was already a monster. This is I joined in 2003, so they had already been a
Yeah.
Wall Street darling, and by the time I got along, they were already buying VMware and Legato and Documentum. So I was a financial analyst there, and one year in particular, I actually got to spend time with the team that was exclusively doing things for the CEO and CFO, and kind of got to ride with them to the quarterly calls to Wall Street. So it was super awesome. I was just like a kid out of school, 20 something. So it was super awesome for me to see how a big publicly traded company functions right across all its arms
Right.
and legs.
I highly encourage anybody out there, if you can get in, because you might be feeling the call of entrepreneurship, but boy, if you can get inside a company, right, and see how systems and operations and
Sure.
processes, right,
Yeah.
move, it really helps bring it to your next business. What else did you learn from EMC that helped you?
To be honest, so let me tell you the next step, and then I'll answer your question, right?
Okay.
Because the story is a little anticlimactic for me, because that was my first and last job. So I left at 24, and then over the last now 16 years or so, 15 16 years, we'll get into it, but I've done 4 companies. Of course, those learnings have been crazy.
Yeah.
And I am more a small company guy. There is so much to learn from large companies.
Yes.
And especially if you have that vantage point. But now it's so far back that it's a little hazy, if I'm being completely honest. But
I understand, Raj. I've been unemployable since 92.
that's exactly my only qualification in my 20s became from 24 to 30 that I could survive without a paycheck. And I don't even say that as a joke or a punchline. I was thinking back to when, and we'll get into it, when Recruiterbox started. But what happened between 24 and 29 is I had 2 failed B2C startups and companies, but I was going at them full time. Right.
Yeah.
So like the second one was eCommerce. The first one was more like a marketplace for people buying and selling things, eCommerce. But both of those failed. And it was like my 2-3 top learnings from that was I was going at them alone. So I was a solo founder, which since I'm super biased towards having a well-rounded co-founding team, because I was not an engineer, but I was trying to create these products which were so tech-enabled, right? And that's what changed in the third one, Recruiterbox, which is the one which kind of went all the way. I had two wonderful co-founders that had created this product, right? They were the creators of it. And I, again, because I had that dream of filling up my website, my stadium, I wasn't thinking about revenue model. I would say the users were transacting, but we were not making money on it, right? And I guess that hit me so hard later that since then I've fallen in love with SaaS, because you sort of make money from day zero and the first customer and the fifth customer, and
that's right.
there is no spinning, there is no story spinning. And I just like how real and utilitarian a SaaS product or a real business software is, even though it doesn't have, I guess, this the sizzle or the allure of having that big stadium filled. So it's been interesting for it to morph into what it's morphed into for me.
Yeah. So like when you tried it the first few times, you learned some great lessons there. You learned that solo was not the way you wanted to roll, that it really does help when you're sharing the burden of building the business with people who are bringing their assets to the table, i.e., their brain power and what they're great at, and you're sharing the late nights and the scary moments, but also that, wow, it sure is easier if you're launching a product that generates revenue right away, where the customer traction is what can help you stay afloat while you find ways to fund. At least you're able to eat, keep the lights on, things like that. Yes?
Absolutely.
That is so good. So good. And so you took that away. So you had that nice learning period. Back in the day, we would call those the Wonder Bread years, where you grew in 12 different ways. And now you've got that behind you. What triggered Recruiterbox? Like, how did that come together for you?
Actually, it triggered when I met my two co-founders. And to be honest, they introduced me to the world of B2B SaaS software products. And what was super interesting to me about that is that I was just thinking about it as a problem to solve, right? And I was just thinking, at that point, I was thinking about viability, because unfortunately, if I had to dial back, I kind of learned some lessons the hard way. Maybe there's no other way to learn them, but if I go back to 2006, 2007, like nobody had told me about like product market fit and validating a product with like early customers, understanding the problem and not starting with the solution, and like frameworks like the MOM test for product building that we use now. So when I met my two co-founders, I was like, wow, this is what it means to start with a problem, right? Like start with the problem, start with the product. Right. And that's what brought about Recruiterbox. And funnily, all three of us got into it slightly accidentally, which is also a funny story, because they had also, they were sort of engineers, had left their jobs too. Both of them were engineers. And
were you on the West Coast at this point?
No. So they were actually in India.
Okay.
So this was, believe it or not, this was cross-border.
Yeah.
And so we were one of the first to do like this distributed team, and then ultimately we were on the West Coast, and all the go-to-market team was here, but we still had large parts of the engineering team distributed globally, and we never raised any funding. By the way, we kind of completely remained bootstrapped, and what helped us is that revenue validation every month. So, again, like going back to the beginning of that, at the time, we were actually at some point applying for jobs, or like they had applied for jobs, and they were like, why is this, like, why can't I find, why can't I filter for jobs based on something other than job titles? Like, what if I want to know, like, this is the characteristics of the company? Recruiterbox ended up solving a very different problem, but that was the starting point.
That
Right?
was the starting point of trying to solve a problem they were having.
Exactly.
And I just have a quick question to circle back to your earlier two companies. Had you raised money for those two?
No.
Okay,
No.
so you haven't had the wonderful experience of losing other people's money.
Uniquely not.
Yes, but remember, your investors, folks, are not widows and orphans, or folks living on the street. They understand the risk. When they sign on to you, they want to help dilute and mitigate that risk as much as possible. But they understand. They know who you are. And one of my favorite quotes was from Damon John when he said, "Hey, if this doesn't work out with this founder, I don't care because I'm in on the next deal. They're going to figure it out, and I'm going to be there, and it's going to be a win." So
that's amazing. Yeah. Institutional investors go in knowing that only 1 out of 10 is going to be their big multi-bagger, right? So
there we go. Hey, Brent from Ottawa, Canada. I sure do appreciate you tuning into the show. And I know you're grabbing some great nuggets today from the conversation with Raj, waving wildly. And maybe this is you too saying, great show. Sometimes LinkedIn does that when we're live. We don't know who it is, but yet, here's Asia saying, amen. That's amazing. From survival to service. I'm so glad you caught that, Asia. That was such a great comment that Raj made about how Recruiterbox came through. And that's the beauty of B2B, right? And what if, because you moved from B2C to B2B. What was that transition like for you as a founder?
Funnily, because I had those 5, of course, there was great learning, but those 5 also painful years. What I loved about B2B is everything was a little more specific. Everything was tangible, measurable. You knew why you were building something. You knew how it was going to exactly be used. And there was immediate feedback. Now, not to say these things are not present in B2C, obviously, but B2C is Boolean, right? Like, especially, and e-commerce is like its own third category, I would say. But B2, if you're creating a marketplace or something of the sort, it's very Boolean. It either works or it doesn't. The thing with B2B is it can always work a little, and then it works a little more, and it is forgiving, because if you keep learning your lessons and reinvesting that revenue, it is so predictable then to kind of have a larger impact.
Yeah. And even though the turnaround time kind of feels like lava, right?
Yeah.
It happens. And it's a business decision. So you're getting people having conversations with you at that level versus maybe an emotional buy that can happen with a customer. I love that. So you started up, you met these co-founders, you started to build the business, and definitely, you were embodying the book Rework, right? Which is all about how to manage a virtual team. Exactly. Because your co-founders were in India. You were in Silicon Valley, San Francisco.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So how did you grow? Did you grow virtually with your team members?
We actually, them here, we see early on, by the way, we were not always clear that we were not going to raise funds. So we spent time, all of us in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, applying to incubators and thinking that, of course, the only way perhaps is to raise a lot of money. That was one piece of it.
Sure.
We also spent time, back in India, growing more of the engineering team. Yeah. Once we had some stability after the first 2 years is when we communicated virtually. But we made it a point to have huge overlaps together in the office, because I also think that is super important when you're trying to figure things out and you don't know what you're doing. And then when you have very clear sort of ownership, so what some people use the OKR framework, then it becomes more and more easy. And we all, regardless of our beliefs, have been forced into it with COVID now. So that discipline has only gotten sharpened of trying to work with people
Right.
over these Zoom
So
calls.
you would go to India and hang out for several months and just get into the vibe. That's wonderful.
Yeah, especially when we were building the early product.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And so how the team acquisition, how big did you get before you exited with Recruiter Box?
So I think you mentioned there in the intro the revenue. We were about 55 people across
Nice.
both geos. We were around 4 million annual recurring revenue. We had 3,000 customers. 75% of them were here in the US, and yeah, we're just we had first talked to this PE fund, or rather they had talked to us 2-3 years ago before we exited, but that was not the right time for us. We were still growing, and then
Yeah.
we had kind of we were burnt out after 6.5-7 years, to be
Well,
honest with
and
you.
I'm always curious because I like to tell founders, have your number. Like
Yeah.
what is that number that if someone came along and said, we want to send you a wire for this number to buy your business, and you can say, too low. How did you guys know A, it was time you wanted to exit? And B, did you have a strategy for what that was going to look like? Because, Raj, I have seen it when people, especially if you've got a board of advisors and investors on board, who say, no, 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 that number is too low. And then things change. The
So
economy,
yeah.
competitors, and the next thing you know, nothing's valuable. So take us through
So
that journey, please.
so 2, 3, 4 things came in mind, and I would start by saying this was now 3 years ago. So yeah, 3 years ago, and I would again, of course, we are living, we're learning, so I would actually do a lot of things differently. But I'll tell you how it went down. We There were two things happening. We were trying to figure out. Recruiterbox grew from like 100K to 300K. So 1 year it was 100K, 2012. Then it went to 300K, so it tripled annual revenue. The next year, then it went to 1 million, so it tripled again. The next year it went to 2 million, so it doubled. And then we started looking at our metrics a little more carefully, because till this point we had enjoyed this growth because we had specifically cracked SEO, organic search, right? So this is kind of crucial to the story. And then the funnel was sort of happening to us. But then as the product grew, as the feature grew, we started looking at who pays us the longest and who really has this pain and need. And so the companies that were hiring consistently, because at the end of the day, by the way, Recruiterbox was a software that helped. It was an applicant tracking system, so it helped you receive applications and manage them in one place with your HR, recruiting, and hiring manager teams. So funnily, we had a lot of businesses that was like a snow plowing service in New York, or a church in Texas, or a restaurant in Phoenix, believe it or not. And they may use the product seasonally, whereas the companies that were growing and hiring were essentially paying us and had the most serious feature requests. So the reason we started doing this analysis, that who should we focus on after 2 million, to be honest, was because there was a lot of churn. The little guys
Sure.
were churning, the big guys were asking. And if we took product feedback from both places, we would have one leg here, one leg there. So because see, we again had this romantic thought that we could be like an Intuit, QuickBooks, or a Constant Contact. Means it's okay if the little guys are paying us $100 a month, we'll just have 100,000 of these customers.
Sure.
But that assumption was wrong, to be honest, because unlike accounting or payroll or those things, even a 5% company uses forever, but companies are not always hiring. So I don't want to use words like pivot, but we then very seriously started looking at doing like this outbound sales and set up a kind of a sales team engine, the whole SDR, account executive,
Right.
which was fine. And we started selling slightly, what we call upmarket, right? Like to mid-market companies. But we were not growing as fast in that, because we also had never thought about for that, what kind of positioning we would need. And like, so
Sure.
it's so funny, but like so much of these things are about perception. People, one company or one HR leader, or regardless of category, like if you're selling a marketing software, the marketing leader will buy something because, you know, a lot of other companies are buying it. And so that trust community is super important. I'm not saying the product's not important. It's super, only if you have a great product that's important. But imagine 5 products are all reasonably great.
Right.
The ones that the huge delta, like one will be at 100 million in revenue, the other one will be at 5 million in revenue. And that has to do with marketing and brand entirely.
100%, baby.
So sorry, long answer to your question, but we were pretty battered because, and here's the big thing, right? Like, which we haven't, I mean, the team, our whole team knows about it, but we it's not like we had a chance to tell a lot of people. But you know what, because we didn't have these investors and advisors and board and all these people on our head, right? It was just the 3 of us. The cap table was, it was our, even if we sold it, it was like 90% of the company was owned by the 3 of us. We had a 10% pool for the team and all of that. We we actually started experimenting with another product at 2 million in revenue, because we frankly thought that product, if you go back to the original dream of, why can't we find jobs outside of titles, we thought that product was going to be the true north to like a much bigger creation.
Right.
And we kind of spent 2 years on it, 18 months to 2 years. Like, one of the founders, who was a product genius, he peeled off, and the other 2 of us were running Recruiterbox. Okay,
Yep.
so we kind of put him on an R&D. Now, while big companies have R&D, the other lesson, at least this is my biased opinion, is a startup is like riding a wild horse, and if you try to ride 2 wild horses at the same time, just imagine, like, that's hardly possible. And I think that when we kind of realize that we don't know if that new thing is going to work, is when we were a little emotionally checked out, because we knew that we could apply these lessons and build a much larger company. And that's why we went in for that exit. So for us,
Right.
It was not so much of a number, frankly, because I would say that if it had become about the number, we would have just gone on a little longer, if I'm being super true.
No.
But we were just solving for time at that point, and going ahead and doing what we wanted to do
Raj,
afterwards.
I gotta tell you, for like 5 minutes now, I've been having this.
Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, I was having an Andy-licious moment. And here's why. Because you went through so many different reiterations. So you can call it pits, but it's really reiterations, because you had different feedback that you were getting. Initially, you were having the funnel, the SEO, organic SEO machine was working and putting everything into the funnel. Then you saw it starting to cap off, and you started to go, what if we do this, or what if we do that? And also, you brought up a really good point about when you don't have investors and your cap table is the 3 of you plus 10% for the pool for the team, you also don't have the advisors. You don't have those people who have been through exits, who have been through plateauing with a B2B business. And sometimes, folks, that's why you want to bring in those super aligned investors, because they can go, okay, team, here's, you want to go do R&D, that's great, but is it really viable? And even though you're learning a lot along the way, and it's so important, sometimes not having that extra brain pool available to you and that type of wisdom available to you, whether it's a board of advisors you've just brought on to give, and you give them some equity in the business for their time and effort, or actual investors. That's one of the good things about having some folks in on the team that way. But also, it sounds like you came to really have this deep self-awareness, which is that we want to run a business at this level. We're really happy at, the 5 to 10 million enterprise. And folks, your happiness is really important. And so understanding that about yourself, I mean, you may want to take over the world with what's happening, with your business. And that's great. You were cut out for that. You're not happy unless you're really driving into that unicorn position. But boy, is it okay. And we don't hear this message enough. So thank you, Raj. It is so okay wherever you land, 500,000, 3 million, 10 million, wherever that is, where you still feel really fulfilled. Do you agree with that?
I have two comments. I strongly feel and agree with what you said, and I'll kind of put it in a way because it's so funny. It ties in very deeply with what we're doing next. But just chronologically, I'll talk about the investor point again, if you don't mind. Say something slightly controversial. So if you have the right investors, I super agree with you that you can learn from them. It's a super valuable network. You will learn how to really scale a company. If I always say building a business and growing a company, two super different things. If you want to get great at company building, like engines that then can do a lot of businesses at scale, or that one business at scale, I do believe you should get the right investors. However, I now buy companies. I acquired a small company last year, and I talked to a lot of founders who have investors whose companies I'm buying because it's not gone the way that they think it is going to go, which is 9 out of 10 times in a VC funded company, which is fine because it's a moonshot, as it should be. Otherwise, some great things in the world would not be invented. But more founders have unpleasant investor experiences. You don't see this written anywhere in TechCrunch or any of the popular.
No, you sure don't.
No, everybody publishes the winners, right? Like
Yep.
Nobody's going to talk about it, and then circles are very small, so you don't even want to talk about it. Well,
and also, like anything, you start bad mouthing, then nobody.
Yeah,
you have to be so careful.
Yeah, but because I have no doubts which team I'm playing on. So I'm on the founders team. So I would tell you that unless you have the right investors, don't get so excited just because people want to give you money. There's so much liquidity in the market that their job is to deploy that money.
Can we take a moment and talk about that, Raj?
Yeah.
Folks, every time I turn around on Twitter, we have another VC fund. Okay, we have another way, and whatever their agenda is, they've raised millions of dollars, and now they have to do something with that. And so we've got a lot of newbies who don't actually have the track record yet, except for my gal right here, Arlen Hamilton, and Backstage Capital. I will plug her always, but many do not. And Raj is right. There's a lot of liquidity out there, but think about MailChimp. Can I use MailChimp as an example, Raj? Because
great one.
Because I was listening to Reid Hoffman. He has that wonderful podcast, everyone. But Reid is really big on investors and definitely big on VCs. And so, when he interviewed one of the founders of MailChimp, he was like, "Oh, you could have gone to market faster." And the guy was Ben, I think it was. It's like, no, we're good. We were very good, and we own the whole company still.
Yeah. So can I add a couple of things there?
Yeah.
So it's by the way, I don't think you should even worry about dilution, right? It's not that I want to hoard all my equity have on my company. And I think a lot of VCs are incredible. Like I'm seeing this Gary Tan's podcast, and he started a new VC fund, and he was the one of the partners at Y Combinator, and then there are some incredible VCs, and there is some quality bar there. The thing is, and this is where I connected to what you said a few minutes ago, it's about fit and expectations, and this is so hard sometimes early in life to know that what are you going to be happy doing on a day-to-day basis for 7 to 10 years. Because if you want to start something and it is going to take 7 to 10 years, across those 7 years, you are going to feel different, because that's just how human beings are. You're going to have a lot of different feelings over the 7 years. So, but once you know yourself a little better, what's super powerful is what you can be in and what you can't be in. Like when Recruiterbox was acquired, I just took 6 months off, and the first thing I sat down and just wrote. There was no ideas, there were no companies. I just said, what do I want to repeat about the last 7 years, and what do I never want to live through? And that became the most important thing for me. So I'm not I might go around a year from now and raise a huge VC fund, but I at least have my reasons now.
Right.
What I mean is raise money from a VC. I'm not ever going to become a VC myself, but I'm saying if I need to do like a huge, consumer startup or marketplace startup, I might connect with the right people. But it helps to know that about yourself, because essentially what you're doing is you have to understand that if, especially for a SaaS company, if you are raising huge amounts of money for something that is sort of selling, what you're saying is I'm going to artificially inseminate the growth. It's like steroids, and
Sure.
we're going to get to 100 million in 6-7 years because we just want to be the number one or number two player in this. Now keep in mind, there'll still be 25 players in this game. Especially in SaaS, there is no winner takes all.
That's right.
You
it's
always
like it's like the bread aisle at the grocery store, everybody.
Yeah, exactly. So as long as you know where you want to be, and we're not even getting into the financial aspect, that also people, when they raise too much money, now they have too little equity. And think about it, when you raise X money at 25 million valuation, 50 million valuation, 100 million, then basically what you're saying is I have to sell the company for 3, 4, 500 or billion, or go public for anybody to make
That's
money.
right, everyone. And not only that, the runway, right, Raj? The runway gets short. Whereas
absolutely,
MailChimp knew they had plenty of time to build. And as you said, that 7-year runway is so much more realistic. And for those of you who are tuning in and asking yourself and saying this story to yourself, why haven't I fill in the blank in 2 years? Hear what Raj said. It takes time to build a business. Stop telling yourself that story. And I want to bring up Heather McCormick, Rimey's incredible comment here, which is she loves the self-awareness and understanding happiness that is coming up in our conversation. That is our job as founders too. I mean, I know we've got a lot on our plate, right, Raj? But we do need to understand what brings us joy, because that's how you get up every day.
Yeah.
And continue on with what you're doing. Yeah. And when you hit that wall, Gary Vee always says, I'd rather be happy in a Toyota than crying in a Ferrari, which is a fun example, but it's a very real example. Well, Raj, you're sharing such great founder stories and giving us great information here. So as you took that time off and thought about what you loved about what you had done and what you weren't fond of, how did you land on FlyData? Tell us some of the details around what it's like to acquire a business and then become its CEO.
So funnily, as I was deliberating all of this, that if I had to do it all over again, how would I do it? And there were, let's say, 2 paths that, hey, should I raise money or a lot of money so I can create a new product, prove it out, put it out of market, etc., or should I do what we did earlier and not bootstrap it and just see if we can spend some time? And what I realized is the first time around, it took us way too long. It took us like 3.5 years to get to product market fit and to our first $1 million in revenue. Not to launch the product, you could do a lot of great MVPs in 3 to 6 months, but that $1 million mark was 3.5 years ago. So the thought that I had, which is not unique these days, like I know a lot of people are thinking about it, is what if I, since we love the 1 to 10 journey, the growth journey, and since we have learned so much, can I find a company, a product, a business that's already at product market fit, that's already going to be doing?
They already figured that out.
Yeah, they already figured this out, so we can now go and do our magic on it. So funnily, when COVID started or was about to started, I sent an email. I did a search on Crunchbase of everybody that had raised X amount of money or more 4 years ago or earlier and had never raised again, and had a team of 20 or less in San Francisco, because that tells me that they didn't do the typical funded company journey, like the series A, B, C, D, and now they have 500 people and this and that.
Nice search metrics, just saying.
Yeah, and then I just sent super personal founder. I mean, I sent it as a bulk campaign, but it was super personalized and customized. And I had 22 calls scheduled from the 119 people I wrote in 2 days. And I learned about these stories, and like some of them are incredible stories, right? Like they just took the call because they were like, this sounds interesting and funny. And some of them didn't even want to sell, and some of them just wanted to chat and talk. And I'd obviously,
I understand how they feel. I love hearing all these stories. So
yeah. And the stories were incredible. I learned so much about like 119 ways a VC round can go right and wrong. And essentially one of these companies was FlyData, and they had raised a lot of money in the past. The founder was running it sort of profitably. Now it hadn't done what they hoped they would do, and they had tried 2 or 3 products, but this one product was making decent revenue. And what struck me about it is super low churn. Now, keep in mind, at the end of the day, we are all expanded or limited by our own life experiences. So I was reeling from that Recruiterbox churn. I was like, churn. I want people to like use me for 3-4 years, 5 years and not leave. And it's so hard to build this and market it and sell it. And so what I loved about FlyData, even though it was in a space we knew nothing about, funnily. Sorry. But we just, we loved that the customers were super loyal.
Yeah.
And they didn't leave. And so.
You saw the right things. You saw the right metrics. You saw the right product market fit. You saw that they'd really nailed down their customer persona. You saw that they had a great distribution channel to their customers, that anytime they calculated, and I'm just going to bring this up, folks, because this is a great video that I have on my YouTube channel. If you want to know how to do this, this is part of what I believe Raj was taking a look at, he and the team there, was the long-term value of those clients and customers and the customer acquisition cost as a result in that ratio. That is where you can get excited. But you didn't know as much about, and I'm just going to bring up the flyer here, data replication for analytics. Like, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, we didn't either, but I can just explain it super simply in English. When we have a lot of e-commerce companies like collage.com, for example, is a customer. And what happens is when an e-commerce company starts doing well, they are running a lot of analytical queries. Exactly what you said: lifetime value, cost of customer acquisition, return on ad spend. They get pulling in all this data in one place. And essentially if they're trying to pull it into something called a data warehouse, like Amazon has one called Red Sheth and there's one called Snowflake, to do really fast analytical queries. Because after a point, if you're just querying your regular data, it takes hours and hours, right? And so very simply, all your data in your business, we are the piping infrastructure that makes sure that all the data, all the updates, all the site visits, all the changes get replicated in real time to a data warehouse. So if you're like a small Shopify store, you may be like, what are you talking about? But like as soon as the e-commerce company starts growing slightly, they usually have an engineer or a CTO who's looking at this, and those are the folks that we sell to.
Oh, that's awesome. So when you say data warehouse, what does that mean?
So
I have an idea in my head, but I'd love to hear you explain it.
I'll explain it super simply, right? This is the advantage because I explained the way I understood it, right? Because I'm not an engineer too. What happened? Let's take a simple example. When in your Shopify store, when traffic is coming in, when orders are coming in, etc., that's called a transactional database, right? Like behind the scenes, it's something called, MySQL, Postgre, MongoDB, and if you use Shopify, you don't have to worry about all of that. That's called a database. But a database records everything that happens. Like think about your Excel sheet, right? Of all your orders and all your customers. If you run a query in a transactional database, it goes through all of those. And imagine when you have millions of rows, right? So that query takes 9 hours. A data warehouse takes your transactional data and warehouses it in a way that you can always find the things that you're looking for in 5 seconds instead of 5 hours in terms of going through the millions of rows. That's all a data warehouse means.
I'm just going to fan myself on that one too, as well as clap, because that really makes me very happy. Because that's where efficiency happens. And as you're growing, you need to have efficiency on putting your thumb on that particular piece of data.
Sure.
But Raj, there's like so many metrics out there.
Mm-hmm.
How do you tailor it down as, as somebody who's got, the Shopify is built, your cart, the whole scene, your e-commerce platform is starting to grow now, and you've got someone who's, hopefully keeping a really close watch on all that information. You've got to understand, did that campaign work? Did this tactic work? Did that strategy pay off? Because your marketing dollars, you need to understand what your return on investment of those marketing dollars is, because marketing is an investment, everybody, not an expense.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, and then you got inventory. You've got to also be saying, well, how fast are we turning it in? First in, first out, however you're tracking that, so that you have that nice smooth and you're not losing money along the way from things hanging out too long, and you understand which things are moving. Talk about those metrics. I went on too long.
No. You're right. Actually, let's, depending on the range of your audience, first, let's take a simple example, right? Like, let's say I'm a Shopify store, and let's say I do Instagram ads and Google AdWords. Simple. Let's keep it simple, and forget FlyData. This has nothing to do with my product.
Yep.
What you want to do is simply, I'm sure most people are already doing it, which is you kind of have your conversion tags set up in Google AdWords and in Instagram, right? So you are obviously seeing when you go in there, hey, I just spent $100. How many people visited the site and what pages? How long did they stay? This is all just on the Google Analytics dashboard.
Right.
Now, I'm not super familiar with Shopify Analytics, but I think it's also pretty good. I mean, you should be able to tie in a lot of these things to your Shopify Analytics. Shopify might show you more on-site metrics and then conversion metrics, like who bought. The real trick is that you want to unify this in one place if you can, which is you want to see that, hey, I had a visit from that Instagram ad. 3 weeks later, they bought something, but then 2 months later, they also bought something. So you have a return on ad spend, which is,
sure,
let's say, in the first month or two or the first purchase. But what if that person came and bought something every 2 months for like the rest of the year? So that you can also get your return on ad spend for 1 year. So you want to go to that level of depth. I think the first thing I mentioned, most people must be already doing.
Yeah.
But
also that information is giving you customer behavior. And especially, you're still 2, 3, 4 years in on your e-commerce business. This is something that, and especially as you do different campaigns to bring in different types of customers. It's so handy to know, right, Raj? That
exactly.
you can base your workflow
exactly
on that info.
Because and you can go, the ads can go to the extent of, and this is also very possible these days, that somebody went to a page, didn't buy because they maybe clicked on the color tabs and didn't buy. Now, when you have the next color, because inventory is so hard, not a lot of this is about data. People are like, this is what I have, this is what I'm selling, I have 2 of these, okay? but as soon as you have a new color and in that same thing, you should show the ad to that same person.
Yep.
So,
and that's how you find out. And I'm just going to put up one of my favorite handy dandy customer persona exercises, folks, for you first-time founders. And you can just email me, Ande@andelyons.com. I'll send this to you. This is, I don't care how long you've been in business, stopping and really understanding what motivates your customer, the goals, and all the different types of customers you're serving. It's a wonderful exercise because, you've been doing that in the beginning, but when you're 1, 2, 3, 4 years into your business, right, Raj, you still need to learn more. You still need to, you're a different person looking at those numbers, as you said earlier.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so now you're going to go even deeper into, and you may have some great aha moments along the way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And Olgi, so great to see you. Yes, great insights and information coming to us from Raj. Olgi, Raj, has a heelless sneaker technology company. So meaning that he's got a sneaker that doesn't have a heel for running and comfortable walking.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to check it out.
Yeah. Olgi, share the URL with us here and I'll bring it up and I can share it with the world as well.
Sure.
Olgi was on the show a couple months ago, sharing his story, going to his family sent him off to China.
Oh, yeah.
And don't come back till you figure it out. And it was a patent from his dad. It's a fun story, Raj. And for anyone tuning in, you can go back a few episodes and you'll find Olgie talking about it. But anyway, thanks for saying hi and giving your great feedback, Olgie. This is great. And I am so excited for you and the FlyData team right now. What hard things are you working on right now? Or we'd like to say exciting things, but still, founders can do hard things, folks. So, and this is how we move our businesses forward. This is how we grow our teams, is being willing to look hard things in the face. FlyData is working, flydata.com for those who are tuning in, listening. What's happening now and how can we help you open doors perhaps or add some wind to your sales?
Yeah. So what hard thing we are working on right now is, what I just said as a suggestion, we're trying to make that easier for our e-commerce business owners and marketing teams.
Yes.
Because they are like, oh, this all sounds good, but this is all broken when like I bring my Instagram ads in, for example.
Right.
So that's the hard thing that we're trying to work out. But what we would love to do is, if people want to join their data from 3-4 different places, forget the data warehouse thing and make sense of it. We basically are in R&D mode to help those people know exactly where they should be spending their ad money and where they can maximize their customers. And this is not a service or a product, by the way. It's important to mention that we're not selling anything. We're not going to charge you. We're just want to look at 10 or 20 data sets, because if we can crack it for you, then we can make a product out of it.
Hey guys. All right, everybody. And so can they email you directly?
Yeah. Raj at FlyData.com. I think, you're amazing about having it right there. So
so we're going to do that, folks. And I'll have his email as well in the show notes, but it's Raj, R-A-J, at FlyData, just like it sounds, .com. And what a great opportunity. Oh my gosh. I'm just even thinking of you, Olgie, right? To really understand your spends, however you're advertising and how that works. Meanwhile, FlyData gets some great information too that they can pull together. So, it's a win-win. I love those moments. They give me
only for Andy's audience.
All right. Even better. So Raj, you've mentioned some wonderful moments about, how, and during the journey, but during those dark nights of the soul, and you're sitting there and you're going, oh my gosh, I'm feeling so inadequate. Even with my co-founders, I'm clearly, and I'm not saying you're saying this to yourself, but moments of inadequacy come up, right?
All the time.
In the middle of the night, and you're talking, to your demons and going, oh, how have you shifted? What's really helped you, push yourself out of those mindsets that aren't helpful?
Yeah. So 2 or 3 things, like some of them may not be relevant, but earlier when things used to completely fail, I used to go and do an acting class. And so I know it's completely off of left field, right? So I spent time between those 2 B2C things, just doing something completely different and in the arts. So I was taking an acting class and I was studying philosophy. But more relevant to, I know you're talking about the day-to-day, I kind of look forward, day-to-day and week-to-week as to what small win I can have. Because for me to keep going on and on, I need this appetite of having some small wins. And the great thing about small wins is it pushes you harder to take action in real time. So less thought, more action, less deliberation, more action. I'm not saying you take thoughtless action, but many times we're going to the other side of analysis paralysis. So I keep a healthy action ratio in my week of actually, reaching out to people, getting on calls, doing things, etc.
Yeah. So I'm going to say this. And the reason that's a stitch that on a pillow moment, I'm going to say focus on the small things, small wins. Remember the small wins. What are the small wins? Those are all good for stitch that on a pillow, for helping you, because the brain kind of naturally wants to go on and see where you're losing. Take it, go, And find that small win and celebrate it. Don't tell yourself a story that, oh, well, it's just a small win. Ooh, small wins, you add those babies up, right, Raj? They come into something yummy.
Exactly.
And also share with us, because this is like my final question, how has entrepreneurship served you, both personally as well as professionally?
I think, and I don't mean this in a financial way because it's been more failures than success. But uh, the one word I would say how it served me is freedom. So what I've realized now, which back my teenage self and young self, I couldn't probably articulate it in these terms, but I think freedom is a super important value for me. And even though we're working hard all the time and we have commitments, like commitment is different from freedom, but I just love that it's given me the freedom to grow and think faster than I would have if I was applying a fear strategy of not trying something. Freedom to help others, freedom to create 55 jobs even if they are not 55,000, freedom to build something and solve a customer's problem, like freedom to take my mom somewhere during the day because I've not been stitched into physically being somewhere. So freedom, I would say.
Sure, freedom to be fully expressed, because even though you didn't know the business inside and out for FlyData, you had the freedom to come in, absorb it, add, your metrics and understanding of the company, and then soar with it.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that. Oh my gosh. And I'm just going to pop up, everybody. Here is that incredible shoe company that we were just talking about, smthedifference.com. I'll have it in the show notes as well. And Asia, thank you for tuning in. Asia saying, thank you for sharing your insight. That's extremely helpful. The shift to another brain side and the small wins are to be celebrated. Asia, you're the best. Thank you for that. And yes, Heather, focus on the small wins. They do add up. Oh my gosh. I am going to, and thanks for the insight, Raj. That's so helpful. And Raj, this is the beauty of having the live show. We get these comments here live, but please know as folks are reviewing the replays, whether it's on LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook, wherever they're seeing this right now, that is a nugget they're going to take away from this conversation. So you have had a ripple effect on founders' lives. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on the show. I'm going to pop you into the green room where I hope you'll hang out until I finish wrapping up the show notes. Thank you so much for bringing your wisdom and delicious numbers, as we like to say here in Boston without the R, to our conversation.
Thanks for listening.
Oh, and folks, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Startup Live show. We bring you, seriously, the real stories. Hashtag the struggle is real, but so is the joy from diverse founders from around the world. I'm so grateful you tuned in and grabbed some nuggets. I want to share with you who is going to be on coming up next. So it is this. Next Tuesday on July 20th at 12 p.m. ET, we're chatting with Lisa Caprelli about authorpreneurship. When you write, publish, and sell a book, you become not just an author, you become an authorpreneur. And like an entrepreneur, an author, or any artist who is selling a product, they're marketing themselves as a very specific brand. They're data-driven, constantly strategizing, and becoming risk tolerant. So this is true for artists who produce a film or write a song or create a piece of art. You're an artistpreneur. And so I hope you can tune in and join us for this delicious conversation. And how do you know whenever I'm posting a new show? You join the Startup Life Live meetup group. You go to bit.ly/Startup Life Live, and live is in all caps. Join the group. That's where I have all the shows posted, and you can get all the details on how to tune in live. I'm so grateful for the gift of your presence during the show. And I love you too, Asia. And yay, I'm so happy, Heather, that you're able to tune in. Always great insights. We learn so much from other founders. So I'm grateful that you all carved out time. And I just love this A.A. Milne quote. So I want you to remember this, like Winnie the Pooh. And that is, you're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and take it in. You're wicked smarter than you think, as we say here in Boston. I'm so delighted that you upped your game today through the stories that Raj shared with us from his lived experience as a founder of many businesses. So thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Mwah. Blowing you kisses filled with appreciation from Boston. Have a great day.